The light is warm, golden, and smells of victory. It spills from the crystal chandeliers of the grand ballroom of the plaza, catching the diamonds around my neck and making them dance. The award in my hands is heavy, solid, a polished testament to a life I rebuilt from ashes. From the podium, I can see a sea of faces, all turned toward me. Their applause a gentle, rolling thunder. Beside me, Leo Maxwell smiles, his eyes not just filled with pride for me, but with a deep, unwavering respect. It's a look I once starved for, and now, it's the air I breathe. My gaze drifts over the crowd, a practiced sweep of gratitude, and then it stops. For a moment, my breath catches. Standing near the back, partially obscured by a marble column, is Julian Croft. He looks the same, dressed in a flawless tuxedo, his dark hair perfectly styled. But he's a ghost at a feast. His shoulders are slumped, his posture holding a loneliness so profound it's almost visible. He's watching me, his face a canvas of regret. He's watching my happiness, my triumph, a world I built not just without him, but in spite of him. He's watching a life that he can see, but never, ever enter again. My smile remains, bright and genuine, but it is not for him. It never will be again. The light in my memory shifts. The golden warmth dissolves into the cool, blue-black of a cavernous movie theater. 2 years earlier, the sound of the film was a distant roar, the explosions on screen a dull counterpoint to the hollow ache in my chest. I sat alone in the plush red seat of the AMC at Lincoln Square, the buttery scent of popcorn making my stomach turn. An hour ago, Julian had leaned over, his lips brushing my cheek, the scent of his expensive cologne a familiar comfort. An emergency meeting on Wall Street. Elara, you know how it is. I'm so sorry. He'd squeeze my hand, his touch light, almost an afterthought. Before disappearing into the aisle, I knew how it was. I knew it all too well. My phone, resting in my lap, vibrated. It wasn't a text from him. It was a notification from Facebook, a post in the Columbia University alumni group. My thumb moved with a strange, detached calm, as if it belonged to someone else. I clicked, and there it was. The truth, in high resolution. The photo was taken at JFK, the International Arrivals Terminal, unmistakable. Julian stood there, wrapped in his favorite camel haircoat, his face etched with a kind of raw, unguarded emotion I hadn't seen in years. In his arms, he held Claire Ashton, her frame delicate, her blonde hair a pale halo under the harsh airport lights. His hands were gripping her as if he was afraid she might dissolve into thin air. In one hand, he clutched a bouquet of white lilies, their petals stark against the dark wool of her coat. He was holding her like a man reunited with his soul. If you looked closely, as I did, you could see the faint redness rimming his eyes. The caption beneath the photo was a drop of poison. Look who's back. And look who came to pick her up. Some things never change. It was posted by a former classmate I barely remembered. And already, it was collecting a cascade of likes and comments. Witty remarks, nostalgic emojis, the digital ghosts of our shared past, all dancing on the grave of my marriage. It was the third time. The final time. I didn't cry. The tears had run dry long ago. I wasn't even surprised. For the past 4 hours, ever since he told me he had a sudden conference call, my phone had been receiving a steady drip of images from an unknown number. Julian's car on the Van Wyck Expressway. Julian waiting by the arrivals gate. Flowers in hand. A grainy shot of their embrace. The one now plastered all over our social circle. I had a complete, moment-by-moment record of his betrayal. I didn't need to guess. I had the receipts. So when Julian finally walked into our Upper East Side penthouse just after midnight, his face a perfect mask of weary professionalism, I was ready. The apartment was silent, the floor-to-ceiling windows showing a glittering, indifferent Manhattan skyline. It was a beautiful cage, and I was finally ready to pick the lock. I am so sorry. Elara, he said, his voice a low, tired murmur as he loosened his tie. He tossed his briefcase onto a leather armchair. The deal is in a fragile state. I had to be there. He expected a fight. He expected tears, accusations, the familiar storm of my anger and my hurt. He was prepared for it, armed with a battalion of excuses and condescending reassurances. He was ready for me to demand he make it up to me, to plan another date night, to buy me another piece of jewelry as a penance. I looked up from the couch, my expression placid. I gently patted the velvet cushion next to me. He paused, his hands frozen on his tie. This was not in his script. It's okay, Julian, I said, my voice even. The words hung in the air, alien and unsettling. He was visibly stunned. He blinked, trying to recalibrate. He was not used to this version of me. He preferred the version that screamed and cried, the version that was predictable, the version he could manage. This quiet, observant stranger unnerved him. I'm going to make it up to you, he said, recovering slightly, falling back on old habits. This weekend. Anything you want. That won't be necessary, I replied softly. I took a deep breath, steeling myself against a tremor of pain that pulsed from my core. I looked him directly in the eye, my gaze unwavering. Go wash up. Freshen up. I have something I want to talk to you about. He stared at me for a long moment, a flicker of suspicion in his eyes, before nodding slowly and walking toward our master bedroom. A few minutes later, the warm, golden light of the ensuite bathroom spilled into the hallway. I heard the shower run. Not long after, there was a sharp clatter, the sound of something heavy, like a bottle of shampoo, falling to the tile floor. His composure was slipping. When he emerged, he was wearing a silk robe, his hair still damp. The mask of weary duty was gone, replaced by a cool, defensive hardness. He was holding his phone. He already knew. Someone had likely texted him about the Facebook post. He stalked into the living room, his jaw tight. Are you going to make a scene about this? He asked, his voice low and laced with practiced irritation. He held up his phone, showing me the very same picture that had sealed our fate. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to have this pointless fight. Every time Claire's name comes up, you get irrational. You become impossible, just like you're being now. There it was. The classic maneuver. The blame shift. My reactions to his infidelity were the problem, not the infidelity itself. In the past, this would have been a spark that lit the forest fire. I would have screamed, thrown things, validated his narrative that I was the hysterical, unreasonable wife. But not this time. I didn't even look at his phone. I simply patted the sofa again. A silent, firm command. Sit down, Julian. He hesitated, then reluctantly sat on the edge of the opposite armchair, a king surveying a rebellion he intended to crush swiftly. I leaned forward and from under the glass coffee table, I retrieved a thick manila folder. I placed it gently on the polished surface between us. The sound soft but final. His eyes started down to the folder, his brow furrowing in confusion. Don't worry, I said, my voice as calm as a frozen lake. From now on, I'll never be the person you hate again. I met his gaze, holding it until he couldn't look away. I want a divorce, Julian. The silence that followed my words was heavier than any argument we'd ever had. It filled the cavernous space of our penthouse, muffling the distant sounds of the city. Julian just stared at the folder, then at me, his face a mixture of disbelief and a flicker of something that might have been fear. He was a man who controlled markets, who swayed boards, who could kill a multi-billion-dollar deal with a single phone call. But in this moment, he was utterly adrift. A divorce? He finally said, the words tasting like a foreign language on his tongue. He let out a short, humorless laugh. Don't be ridiculous, Elara. We're not getting a divorce over a picture on Facebook. It's not about the picture, Julian. It's about what the picture represents. It's the final period at the end of a very long, very painful sentence. He shook his head, a condescending smile playing on his lips. It was the same smile he used in boardrooms right before he dismantled an opponent's argument. You're being emotional. You're hurt. I get it. We'll talk about this in the morning when you've had some sleep and you're thinking clearly. He made a move to stand up, to dismiss me, to put me back in the box he had created for me. But my voice, quiet yet steely, stopped him. I am thinking more clearly than I have in 7 years, I said. The papers are all there. My lawyer has already sent a copy to yours. This isn't a negotiation. He sank back into the chair, the arrogance in his posture deflating. He finally opened the folder. His eye scanned the first page, his expression hardening as he registered the name of the law firm I had hired. It was one of the most ruthless, high-profile divorce firms in New York. This wasn't a cry for attention. This was a declaration of war. You're really doing this? He asked, his voice low and dangerous. You're willing to throw away our life, our history, everything we built, because I went to pick up an old friend from the airport? An old friend you lied about meeting? An old friend you secretly fly to London to see once a month? An old friend for whom you reenacted a wedding ceremony on our first anniversary? Yes, Julian. For that old friend. I am throwing it all away. The color drained from his face. He had no idea I knew about the monthly trips. He thought he had been so careful. So clever. He looked at me then. Truly looked at me. And for the first time, he saw not his emotional wife, but an adversary who had been quietly collecting ammunition. He didn't sleep at home that night. He packed a small bag, his movements stiff and angry. Before he left, he stood at the door, his face a cold mask. This is a mistake. Elara. A childish, reckless mistake. You're making a scene to get my attention. And it's pathetic. You'll regret this. As the heavy door clicked shut behind him, I didn't feel regret. I felt the first, fragile flutter of freedom. The next day, I met Maya Chen at a quiet bar in Soho. The place was dimly lit, smelling of old wood and whiskey. Maya, with her sharp, intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that had made her a formidable corporate liar, listened without interruption as I laid out the whole story. I didn't spare a single detail. From the flowers at the airport to the divorce papers on the coffee table. She didn't look surprised. Maya had witnessed my obsessive, all-consuming love for Julian for years. She'd seen me rearrange my life to fit his, cancel plans with her at the last minute because he needed me, and defend his aloofness to her friends. She'd seen me cry over Claire Ashton more times than she could count. In our wilder days, after a few too many cocktails, I would make her promise me one thing before my head hit the table. If I pass out, call Julian. Make sure he comes to get me. The memory made me cringe. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment, swirling the ice in her glass. Are you sure? Elara. Really sure? She asked, her voice gentle but probing. Because once you start this, there's no going back. The Crofts don't lose gracefully. I'm sure. I said, my voice firm. It will hurt. I know it will. But I won't regret it. A slow smile spread across her face. It was a smile of pure, unadulterated support. She reached into her sleek leather briefcase and pulled out a business card. She pushed it across the table toward me. I heard divorces in the city are so in demand you have to book a court date months in advance. This guy, she said, tapping the card, is the best shark in the business. He knows how to get things done. Fast. I picked up the card. It belonged to the man I had already hired. We both laughed. A real, genuine laugh that felt like breaking a fever. So, she said, her expression turning serious again, a hint of concern in her eyes. What's your next move? Honestly? I don't know. I admitted. He's not going to make this easy. He thinks I'm just throwing a tantrum. And he proved me right. Julian's strategy was exactly what I'd predicted, a Cold War. He moved into his family's exclusive members-only club on Park Avenue. He cut off communication, forcing me to go through his lawyers for everything. He was trying to isolate me, to make me feel the full weight of his absence, confident that I would eventually break and come crawling back, begging for forgiveness. He'd always been a master of the silent treatment. It was during this period of unnerving quiet that I found myself spending long hours. In my design studio, it was my sanctuary. A bright, airy space in a converted Brooklyn warehouse, filled with the scent of metal and wax, the glint of raw gemstones, and the ghost of my ambition. I thought I would be a wreck, unable to focus. But instead, a strange clarity settled over me. One night, lying awake on our massive, empty bed, I didn't cry myself to sleep. Instead, I had a dream so vivid it felt like a memory replaying itself. I dreamt of the night I first met Julian Croft. I was 18 again. It was the summer after high school graduation, and my parents, desperate to cement our family's new money status, were parading me around the Hamptons like a prize filly. My mother had zipped me into a tight, suffocating designer gown, her every word a reminder of my duty to be charming, to be beautiful, to land a husband from a family with a name that mattered. I felt like a commodity, shuttled from one glittering party to the next. That night, at a gala hosted by some banking tycoon, I couldn't take it anymore. While my parents were schmoozing, I slipped away to a guest bathroom, peeled off the constricting dress, and changed into the simple white t-shirt and jeans I had stashed in my purse. I felt like a princess escaping the tower. I snuck out a back door and started walking down the long, winding driveway, thinking I was making a grand escape towards some unknown, brilliant future. I had forgotten the party was on a private estate on a hillside. Within 20 minutes, In my flimsy ballet flats, Princess Barbie was about to pass out from heat exhaustion, just as I was about to give up and sit on the curb. A sleek, black car pulled up beside me. The window glided down, revealing a young man with dark, intense eyes and a jawline that could cut glass. Julian Croft. Even then, we were both notorious in our own circles. I was known for being desperate to marry up. He was known for being in love with a poor girl his family would never approve of. In that moment, looking at each other from across the social divide, we were two sides of the same counterfeit coin. Two prisoners of circumstance. We did something crazy that night. We drove to Montauk, bought cheap beer from a convenience store, and sat on the beach, talking until the sun came up. We talked about art, about our dreams, about the suffocating weight of our family's expectations. For the first time, I felt seen. Someone took a photo of us that night, a grainy, romantic shot that ended up going viral in our small, insular world. Just like that, in a haze of salt air and teenage rebellion, we were unofficially engaged. Our marriage started as a partnership of convenience. I was his perfect, socially acceptable shield, allowing him to carry on his long-distance affair with Claire, who had moved to London to pursue acting. In return, he was my buffer against my family's relentless pressure, giving me the time and space to finally go to design school and pursue my real passion. The three of us, in a strange, unspoken way, coexisted. My designs were even inspired by the bittersweet romance I witnessed from afar. The shift was subtle. It began after Claire, under pressure from Julian's formidable mother, married someone else in London. Julian was a ghost for months, lost and aimless. But even in his own grief, he never forgot to take care of me. He was the one who showed up, checkbook in hand, when my father's reckless investments nearly bankrupted our family. And he was the one who stood up to my mother, his voice like ice, when she tried to force me into a business deal that would have required me to give up my studio. That day, I looked at him, at this broken, beautiful man who had still found the strength to protect me, and I said, "Julian, maybe we should try, for real." He smiled, a sad, bitter twist of his lips. "You want to chase after me now, Elara?" I had nodded, and from that day on, I became his shadow. I created endless opportunities for us to be together. I learned his coffee order, his favorite restaurants, the brand of shirts he wore. I wrote him letters. I once stood at Everest Base Camp on a trip with friends and screamed my love for him into the wind. I never, ever considered giving up, until our first wedding anniversary. The day I discovered that he and Claire, on one of his business trips, had held a private ceremony in a small English chapel, exchanging rings and vows before God. His excuse was so absurd it was almost brilliant. Claire's husband was too busy to attend their own church ceremony. The venue was booked. It would have been a waste. It meant nothing. Elara, if it meant anything, wouldn't she have married me? I'm over her. I promise. And I, blinded by love and a desperate need to believe him, chose to trust him. "I believe you," I had whispered that night, curled up against him. "I believe you when you say you love me. So I'm going to give you 3 chances. 3 mistakes. After the third one, whether you want it to be or not, it's over between us." He had agreed, confident it would never come to that. The notification from my lawyer's office pinged on my phone, pulling me back to the present. It was an email from Julian's legal team. They formally rejected the divorce petition. They proposed marriage counseling instead. The war had officially begun. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in psychological warfare. Julian refused to speak to me directly, communicating only through terse emails sent by his shark of a lawyer, a man named Marcus Thorne, whose specialty was wearing down opponents with endless, trivial procedural requests. They requested financial disclosures I had already provided. They questioned the validity of our prenuptial agreement, a document Julian himself had insisted upon. It was a strategy of attrition, designed to exhaust my resources and my resolve. He was betting on the fact that I loved him too much to see this through to its ugly end. He believed my entire identity was wrapped up in being Mrs. Julian Croft. For a long time, he had been right, but something had fractured in me that night in the movie theater. The foundation of my love, already riddled with cracks, had finally crumbled. I spent my days in a strange state of dual focus. In my lawyer's office, I was a cold, calculating general, reviewing documents and planning my next move with Maya and my legal team. But in my studio, I was an artist rediscovering her voice. The pain, instead of paralyzing me, Was transmuting into fuel? My designs became bolder, sharper, infused with a defiant energy they had lacked before. The alumni chat group, the original source of my pain, became my battlefield. It was buzzing with the news of Claire's return and the upcoming alumni reunion gala. Everyone was speculating, gossiping, taking sides. I knew Julian would be there. I knew Claire would be on his arm. It was the perfect stage for our first public confrontation. I needed to shatter his illusion that he could control this narrative, that he could keep his pristine reputation intact while quietly suffocating me into submission. The reunion was held at a trendy, renovated warehouse space in the meatpacking district, all exposed brick and industrial chic lighting. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the sound of forced laughter. I walked in alone, wearing a stark, black dress that was both elegant and severe. I felt 100 pairs of eyes on me, heard the whispers ripple through the crowd as I passed. I ignored them, my gaze sweeping the room until I found them. They were standing near the bar, a perfect, tragic couple straight out of a novel. Julian looked impossibly handsome in a dark suit, and Claire was ethereal in a flowing, white dress. She was clinging to his arm, her expression a delicate mix of vulnerability and triumph. They were surrounded by a small circle of admirers, old friends hanging on their every word. I didn't approach them. I simply went to the bar, ordered a glass of champagne, and waited. I needed to see how they would play this. The first move came from Claire. She excused herself from the group and drifted toward the hallway leading to the restrooms, her path deliberately intersecting with mine. The corridor was narrow, a bottleneck of people. It was not a place for a private conversation, which was precisely why she chose it. "Alara," she said, her voice a soft, breathy whisper. She lit a slim cigarette, a gesture of studied nonchalance. "You're making such a scene with this divorce. You don't need to force him to choose. You know, because no matter what, you'll always be the one who loses." Her eyes, a pale, forget-me-not blue, were filled with a cool, condescending pity. "It's been 7 years. Haven't you figured out your place yet?" My hand tightened around the stem of my glass. A hot, furious retort rose in my throat. But before I could speak, I saw Julian approaching from behind her. Her entire demeanor shifted in an instant. The mask of cool provocation melted away, replaced by one of angelic fragility. The speed of her transformation was breathtaking. She reached out and grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Mrs. Croft, Alara, you've misunderstood," she pleaded, her voice now trembling and laced with tears. "There's nothing between Julian and me. What happened back then was so long ago. I didn't know you were still holding on to it." Her eyes welled up, shimmering under the dim lights. "I only came back to see my family. If you want me to leave, I'll leave. Just not tonight. Please, grant me this small dignity. I just want one meal with my old friends." I was so stunned by her performance that I was momentarily speechless. And in that moment of hesitation, Julian arrived. A powerful force slammed into me from behind, pushing me hard against the greasy, exposed brick wall. Julian's face was a thundercloud of rage. A vein throbbed in his temple. "I told you to stay away from her," he hissed, his voice a low, guttural growl that was all the more terrifying for its quiet intensity. His hands were on my shoulders, pinning me to the wall. My shock instantly ignited into pure, white-hot fury. Without thinking, I brought my hand up and slapped him across the face. The sound was sharp, a crack that silenced the nearby chatter. Before he could react, I slapped him again, with my other hand, harder this time. 2 red marks bloomed on his perfect, chiseled face. He stared at me, utterly poleaxed. I pointed a trembling finger at Claire, who was now cowering theatrically behind him. My voice was low, but every word was a steel-tipped dart. "If I hit her, it's assault. But you are my husband. This mess, all of it, started with you." I met Julian's shocked gaze. "So from now on, every time she provokes me, I will hit you. Let's see how many slaps that pretty face of yours can take." With that, I reached into my clutch, pulled out a folded, notarized copy of the divorce petition, and threw it at his chest. The papers fluttered to the dirty floor between us. "I came here to serve you these. Stop acting out your little melodrama." I turned and walked away, my back straight, my head held high, leaving them frozen in their tableau of shock and humiliation. I went straight to the restaurant manager, slipped him $500 in cash, and asked for the security footage from the hallway camera. An hour later, the video file was in my inbox. I forwarded it immediately to a single recipient, Walter Croft, Julian's grandfather, the patriarch of the family, a man who valued dignity and control above all else. I didn't bother waiting for the fallout. I left the party, got in my car, and drove, not to the empty penthouse, but to the small, 3-bedroom apartment in a quiet part of Brooklyn that my old nanny had left me in her will. It was my secret sanctuary, the one place that was entirely mine, untouched by Julian or the Croft family. Every corner of it held memories, but they were my memories of late-night sketching, of celebrating small victories with Maya, of being just a Laura. For a time, after we first got together for real, this place had held memories of us, too. He had held me on the small sofa and whispered that forever was too long, but a lifetime of love would be enough. He had said he loved me. I had believed him. Now, that lifetime felt like just another one of the cheap, mass-produced lies sold to the masses. A joke with a terrible punchline. Back in my own space, surrounded by my own things, I finally began my real work. I opened my laptop and started searching for information on Claire Ashton. We had been in the same jewelry design program at Columbia before I'd left. But after 7 years away, she had pivoted. She was now a stage actress, having started in small, off-West End theaters in London. She had built a modest reputation for herself. She was also, I discovered, a budding social media influencer with nearly 1 million followers. She had a contract with a digital content agency and was planning her first major livestream sales event in 3 days, hoping to leverage her return and her public narrative of heartbreak to sell a curated collection of lifestyle products. A grim smile touched my lips. I felt a surge of gratitude for my own meticulous, almost obsessive, habit of documenting my life. I opened my private cloud storage and my digital notes. I chose my favorite PowerPoint template Teclian, elegant and ruthless, and began to build my case. I worked through the night, fueled by black coffee and a righteous anger. I compiled every piece of evidence, arranging it in a perfect, irrefutable timeline. The flight confirmations for Julian's monthly round trips to London for the past 4 years, receipts for the custom-made couple ski gear they used in the Alps, photos of the birthday gifts he had prepared for her each year, always corresponding to her age: 28 roses, 29 pearls, 30 custom-blended perfumes. The logic was airtight, the evidence overwhelming. Anyone looking at it would come to one simple conclusion: this was not a forgotten ex-girlfriend. This was a long-term, clandestine second life. This was the story of a deeply devoted couple. 3 days later, as the notification popped up on my screen that Claire Ashton's livestream had begun, I took a deep breath, and I hit post. I sent the entire PowerPoint presentation to a dozen gossip columnists, news outlets, and influential bloggers. The internet exploded. Within minutes, the names Julian Croft and Claire Ashton were trending on Twitter, attached to the hashtag #ElesianLees, and next to it, a bright red, bursting hot emoji. The livestream that Claire had hoped would launch her new career, the one she expected would bring in a fortune, ended in a spectacular, humiliating disaster. My phone began to detonate. A relentless barrage of calls and texts from numbers I didn't recognize, and a few I knew all too well. The one I was waiting for came from a private number. I answered. The screech that erupted from the speaker was so shrill, so filled with venom, that it made my head ache. It was my mother-in-law, Catherine Croft. "How dare you?" she shrieked, her voice a weapon of pure fury. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You've dragged our family's name through the mud. You ungrateful, classless little nobody." Ordinarily, I would have swallowed my anger. 4 years, I had tolerated Catherine's barbs, her thinly veiled insults, and her constant, unfavorable comparisons between me and the sainted Claire Ashton. I had endured it all because I loved her son. But there was no reason to be polite anymore. I took a deep, steadying breath, and then I unleashed a torrent of my own. "Listen to me, you old witch," I yelled into the phone, my voice raw. "I have shown you more respect than you have ever deserved. Don't you ever call me again." I slammed the end call button and immediately blocked her number without a second thought. Catherine Croft had never liked me. She had accepted our marriage as a grim necessity because, among the women her son might realistically marry, I was the lesser of 2 evils. Claire was an actress with no family pedigree. I, at least, came from a family with money. Even if it was new, my first major fight with Julian had been because of her. We were newly married, and she had a habit of making surprise visits to our penthouse. arriving unannounced at all hours. She would sweep through our home, criticizing my taste in art, my choice of caterer, my very presence in her son's life. I had gritted my teeth and borne it, for Julian's sake, until the day she looked me dead in the eye and said, with a serene, cutting smile, "You know, I always did prefer Julian's last girlfriend." That was the day she saw the real me. I had exploded. I screamed at her, cursed at her, and physically chased her out of my home, throwing a decorative cushion at her retreating back. From that day on, I refused to attend any Croft family function she organized. I didn't care if her society friends whispered about her difficult daughter-in-law. I would not be a doormat. That night, after the argument, I had been miserable, huddled under the covers in our bed. Julian had come home from the office and stood by the bed for a long time, just looking at me. Finally, he'd spoken, his voice low and tight. "Alara, you had a fight with my mother." I refused to answer. He grew angry, yanking the covers off me. His voice was a mix of warning and exasperation. "Alara, that's my mother." "So what?" I had screamed, grabbing the nearest thing to book and hurling it at him. "She's your mother. So I'm just supposed to take it? I'm supposed to smile while she shoves Claire's memory in my face in my own home?" Looking back now, I realized that pattern had defined our marriage. I would endure and endure until I broke. And then my explosion would be used as proof of my instability. A memory, sharp and a little terrifying, surfaced. A few months after that first fight, I had done something truly unhinged. I had decided to apologize. At dawn, still in my silk pajamas, my hair a tangled mess, I got in my car and sped to the Croft family mansion in Greenwich. I found my mother-in-law in the garden, calmly sipping tea. I grabbed a small, sharp trowel from the gardener's basket. Waving it menacingly, I grabbed Catherine by the arm, dragged her to my car, and pushed her into the passenger seat. I slammed my foot on the accelerator, tires screeching as I peeled out of her perfectly manicured driveway and onto the highway, heading for the airport. "You regret it, don't you?" I'd yelled over the roar of the engine, my eyes wild. "Fine. I'll take you to JFK right now. I'll buy you a ticket. You can go and invite your precious Claire to come back yourself." She was frozen in her seat, her knuckles white as she gripped the handle above the door. She tried to maintain her composure, but her voice trembled. "I'm sorry. I was wrong." I almost got her to the departures terminal before my rage subsided and I let her go. After that incident, my reputation within the Croft clan was sealed. I was a hysterical, petty, jealous wife. I didn't care. I knew one thing for sure. No one would ever walk all over me and get away with it. Julian called me a few minutes after his mother. I could hear the exhaustion in his voice before he even spoke a word. The line was silent for a long moment. A tense, static-filled standoff. Finally, he sighed, a sound that seemed to travel through the phone and physically press down on me. Then he used the name he only used when he was trying to coax me down from a ledge, his voice soft and deceptively gentle. "Lara, stop this. Okay? Don't make this any messier." The moment he used that intimate, tender nickname, something inside me snapped into sharp focus. Julian Croft had never truly respected me. Not in our marriage. And not now. He still believed that my demand for a divorce, my public airing of his secrets, all of it was just an elaborate, desperate ploy to hold on to him. My love for him had been so absolute, so all-encompassing, that he had taken it for granted, basking in its warmth without ever fearing its loss. I was silent for a long time, thinking. Then I spoke, my voice calm and deliberate. "You must be so proud of yourself, Julian. You have your tragic first love by your side, and a devoted, legal wife who is fighting like hell to keep you. A woman waiting for you on one side of the world, and another woman you call home on the other. You can't be that dirty and that shameless at the same time." I must have finally, truly angered him. When he spoke again, his voice was laced with a bitter, condescending sarcasm. "Alara, I can guarantee you one thing. The position of Mrs. Croft will always be yours. No matter what happens, I will always come home to you. So stop obsessing over Claire. Do you have any idea how much trouble you've caused her? You're driving both of us insane." I laughed. A cold, sharp sound. "And how is that my problem? Being ridiculed by your old classmates, being dragged by netizens, didn't you to bring all of this on yourselves? I'm not going to stand by and watch you to parade your great love in front of my face anymore." only to lash out in desperation when I'm pushed to my limit. No, Julian. This time, I'm making sure she's branded as a cheap, pathetic mistress from the very beginning. I will make sure she never earns a single penny using your name. We fell into a stalemate, a cold war of silence and legal maneuvering. To spite me, he doubled down. He started appearing with Claire at every major party and charity event. A united front. She was his unofficial plus one. His silent, beautiful companion. They looked dazzling together. A picture of defiant love. A few of our mutual friends tried to intervene, to play peacemaker. One of them, a woman named Olivia, called me, her voice full of earnest pleading. Elara, it's not what it looks like. She'd said. They're not together. It's just their breakup was so traumatic. They have unresolved issues. And Claire has had it so tough. Her first marriage ended. Left her with a young child and nothing else. She was just trying to make a little money to support her son. And now because of you, she has to pay a huge fine for breach of contract. Julian is a rare find. Elara, be more magnanimous. Don't make it so difficult for everyone. I cut her off. Olivia, if you want to be a mediator, why don't you go and convince Julian to sign the divorce papers so we can end this amicably? And I hope your husband finds a soulmate just like Julian's. She erupted in a string of curses and I hung up, deleting her number from my contacts. The lines were being drawn, and I was seeing clearly who my real friends were. As the holidays approached, the notoriously complicated Croft family traditions began to surface. The annual New Year's Eve family dinner was a command performance. I had no intention of going. But then Walter Croft, Julian's grandfather, called me personally. His voice was frail but firm. Out of respect for him, the one person in that family who had always shown me kindness, I gritted my teeth and agreed to go. Walter was a true gentleman of the old school. At our chaotic, rushed wedding ceremony, most of the Crofts had snubbed because of my family's tacky behavior. He had been one of the few who stayed until the very end. I remembered him humming along to the wedding march, his old eyes twinkling as he smiled and clapped for us. As fate would have it, my car pulled up to the Greenwich mansion at the exact same moment as Julian's, and sitting in his passenger seat, looking regal and smug, was Claire Ashton. They both got out of the car, a pair of dark, elegant figures against a cold December sky. Claire's expression was a careful blend of indifference and a subtle, triumphant smirk. Julian's was just cold. He placed a gentle hand on the small of her back, leaning in to murmur something in her ear. They were a perfect composition, a painting of intimate conspiracy. My arrival felt like a clumsy intrusion, a third wheel crashing their private moment. But I was done being the polite intrusion. I stormed toward them, my heels clicking like gunshots on the cobblestone driveway. Before either of them could react, I grabbed a handful of Claire's perfectly styled blonde hair and yanked her head back. Hard. The Croft family must be in decline. I spat, my voice dripping with contempt. They're even letting stray alley cats in through the front door now. Claire let out a soft whimper and sagged against Julian, her eyes wide and brimming with unshed tears. But I saw it. I saw the flash of a derisive smile on her lips before she hid her face in his chest. It was for my eyes only. Julian's face turned a dark, furious red. He grabbed my wrist, his grip like steel. What the hell are you doing? He roared, his voice echoing in the quiet twilight. My mother invited her. There's something important happening tonight. I didn't flinch. I stared him down, my own anger a formidable shield. So what? I don't care if your dead ancestors rose from their graves and invited her personally. I will still do this. We walked into the house together, a tense, volatile trio. Julian, afraid of what I might do next, kept himself positioned as a human shield between me and Claire. The living room was filled with Croft relatives, a murmuring flock of aunts, uncles, and cousins who all paused their conversations to stare at me with a uniform, chilly indifference. They looked at me as if I were a piece of modern art they neither liked nor understood. Julian was immediately fussing over Claire, checking her scalp for injuries, while I was left standing alone in the grand entryway, completely isolated. I hated this house. No matter how brightly the crystal chandeliers shone, no matter how impeccably clean every surface was, the air always felt thick with the smell of decay, the cloying scent of a dynasty slowly rotting from the inside out. Catherine Croft was holding court in the center of the room, surrounded by her sisters-in-law. She pointedly avoided my gaze, but when she saw Julian standing protectively beside Claire, her spine straightened. And her voice became noticeably louder. Making a scene before you even step inside. Utterly without breathing. I laughed. A short, sharp bark that cut through the strained silence. I was about to ask you the same thing. I said, my voice carrying across the room. Julian tells me you invited Miss Ashton. What's this? Are you trying to follow in your husband's footsteps? Get the wife and the mistress together for a cozy holiday celebration? A collective gasp went through the room. It was a low blow. And I knew it. Julian's father was notoriously unfaithful. His mistresses were numerous and often embarrassingly public. One infamous Christmas, he had brought both his wife and his current favorite mistress to the family dinner, an event that had sent Catherine into a nervous collapse for months. The reference hit its mark. For a moment, the room was utterly still. No one dared to speak. Catherine slowly turned the jade prayer beads in her hand, her face a mask of serene composure. Don't be so petty, Elara, she said, her voice smooth as silk. You need to think about the bigger picture, not just your husband's bed. I invited Claire tonight because we have important business to discuss. After you so cruelly ruined her live stream, I felt we owed her some form of compensation. To make up for your mistake, I've instructed Julian to give her the brand ambassadorship for Elysian Vows. She paused, then turned to me, her expression one of mock kindness, her voice dripping with false concern. You're not angry, are you, dear? In that moment, a physical pain shot through my chest, so sharp it felt like a fist clenching around my heart. My hand, resting on the nearby drink trolley, tightened around the neck of a newly opened bottle of Cabernet. I couldn't tell if the feeling burning through me was rage or grief, only that it was excruciating. I turned my head slowly, my eyes locking onto Julian's. Whose idea was this? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He started to walk toward me, his expression conflicted. But Claire subtly tugged at the hem of his jacket, holding him back. Catherine continued, her voice placid. You should have some sympathy, Elara. She's a single mother, raising a child alone. It's not easy. Everything costs money. You shouldn't have been so small-minded as to cut off her livelihood. I ignored her. My entire world had narrowed to the man standing across the room. And you? I asked him, my voice trembling with the effort of keeping it steady. You agreed to this? His gaze met mine. His voice was low but resolute. Elara, I owe her. I want to make things right. The instant the words left his mouth, I threw the bottle. It flew through the air in a perfect, crimson arc and shattered against the wall just inches from his head. A woman shrieked. Wine exploded like blood against the pale silk wallpaper. Shards of dark green glass rained down onto the priceless Persian rug. For a split second, no one could tell if the red staining his crisp white shirt was wine or blood. The hatred in me erupted. Everyone in this room knew what Elysian Vows was. It was the small, boutique jewelry brand under the Croft corporate umbrella. In English, it meant a love that was timeless, endlessly exploring new possibilities. It was Julian's wedding gift to me. The entire brand was built on our love story. And now, he was using it to honor his first love. His mother was using it as a weapon to humiliate me. In that instant, my entire strategy shifted. An amicable divorce? Forget it. I wiped my sweaty palms on my dress. I remembered that Grandpa Walter was still waiting for me upstairs. I took a deep, shuddering breath. Composing myself, I walked over to my mother-in-law, a strange calm settling over me. I reached out and gently adjusted her slightly askew cashmere shawl. My voice was soft, almost sweet. Mother, you know I don't believe in hitting my elders. It's not polite, but you seem so determined to provoke me. What am I to do? I paused, letting the question hang in the air. I'll just have to hit your son instead. I've already told Miss Ashton the same thing. Hitting you, or her, is a crime. But hitting him, that's just a domestic affair. I leaned in closer, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I hope you remember that. It gets so tiresome having to repeat myself. I could feel her body tremble slightly under my hand. The crowd of relatives began to murmur, criticizing my disrespect, my audacity. A cousin's wife, a woman from Hong Kong who had married into the family, piped up in her accented English. This girl is both fierce and foolish. Men are all cheap. You use them. You don't need to love them. That one, she said, gesturing to Julian, is dumber than a pig. You think you can change him? She leaned forward. Grandpa likes you. Just have a baby. Then everyone in the family will be happy. My eyes burned with unshed tears. I gave her a bitter smile. Before I had decided on divorce, that same thought had crossed my mind. But then I would remember our marriage certificate, still sitting on my vanity. Julian had been so busy back then. We'd never had a proper honeymoon or a wedding photo shoot. He had felt so guilty about it, holding me and whispering apologies 100 times. I remembered him sitting under the soft lamplight, his glasses perched on his nose, painstakingly handwriting each of our wedding invitations himself. Perhaps it was because the love had once been so real that I could not bear these cracks. I could not simply paper over the ruins and pretend it was a palace. I went upstairs to see Grandpa Walter. His health had been poor since the winter began, and he rarely came downstairs. The housekeeper had already told him what had happened. He looked at me, a slow, satisfied smile spreading across his wrinkled face. He nodded in approval. Good girl. You know how to stand up for yourself. He pressed several things into my hands. A thick envelope of cash, several pieces of exquisite, antique jewelry from his private collection, the deeds to a few properties registered in his name. I looked at him directly. Are you sure you want to give these to me? I'm about to divorce Julian. If you ask for them back later, I won't return them. He let out a hearty laugh, his old eyes misting over. What does this have to do with him? These are for you. I know he has wronged you, and I know that out of all my granddaughters-in-law, you have treated me the best. He sighed, his voice full of a deep sadness. I only regret that you two have a destiny together, but no fate to stay together. He looked past me, as if seeing a ghost from long ago. I remember it so clearly. The day you two were getting married. His eyes were shining. He looked just like the boy I remember from his childhood. He came to me, blushing, and told me he was marrying the girl he loved most in the world. He looked back at me, his eyes full of sorrowful affection. Elara, I'm an old man. I can't control them anymore. I can only use these things to wish you well in your future. I had withstood my mother-in-law's insults. I had brushed off Claire's provocations. But Grandpa Walter's gentle words, his genuine kindness, shattered my composure. A sob broke from my lips, and then another. I cried. Ugly, gasping sobs, until I couldn't breathe. Why? I choked out, the word torn from my soul. Why did we end up like this? He gently patted my head, his touch frail but comforting. His voice was a low, steady rumble. He wasn't the right one. Child, don't cry for him anymore. The official announcement of Claire Ashton as the new face of Elysian Vows was timed for maximum impact. It dropped on New Year's Eve, as the clock struck midnight and fireworks exploded over the East River. Every major digital billboard in Times Square simultaneously switched to a massive, glowing image of Claire. She was wearing the brand's signature necklace. Her expression one of serene, triumphant beauty. A netizen on a popular forum posted a screenshot, asking, "So the real wife lost after all?" Using an anonymous account, I posted a simple, two-word reply, "Still fighting." Those 2 words went viral. Still fighting shot to the top of the trending topics. People flooded the Elysian Vows social media pages with comments. I can't even hate her. The tenacity is inspiring. If I had half her fighting spirit, I'd be CEO of my company by now. She wants to keep selling. Let's see how long this lasts. The campaign I had unknowingly started with my honest love story for Elysian Vows now turned against it. Under my tenure, I had established the Elysian Fund, a foundation that donated a portion of all profits to support women facing hardship. Now, thousands of women who had bought the jewelry because they believed in that message began to speak out in my defense. They stormed Claire's promotional live streams, flooding the comments with messages of protest against the new brand ambassador. I don't know if it was a calculated PR move or Claire's own idea, but she handled the backlash with manipulative genius. During a broadcast, she pretended to accidentally read one of the harshest comments aloud. Her eyes immediately welled with tears. Just as the viewer count peaked, she gave a small, pained smile. Her voice choked with emotion. The first person to speak isn't always telling the truth. She whispered into the camera. I admit, I had a relationship with the CEO of the Croft Corporation, Julian Croft, a long time ago. We were young, and we were deeply in love. We had planned to get married right after graduation, to take our wedding photos in Iceland. She paused, taking a shaky breath. But the woman who ended up becoming Mrs. Croft was the same girl who used to follow me around, calling me her big sister, saying she wanted to be my maid of honor. She looked directly into the camera, her blue eyes shimmering with righteous sorrow. He who is without sin, Let him cast the first stone. I don't want to be slandered like this forever. But what's past is past. There's no point in bringing it up again. In that one masterfully delivered monologue, public opinion shifted on a dime. The narrative was no longer about a cheating husband and a wronged wife. It was about a stolen love, a tragic heroine, and me, the treacherous, backstabbing friend. My plan had been to immediately release the trove of dated, intimate photos of Julian and me from that time, proving that our relationship had blossomed long after hers had ended. But when I logged into our shared family cloud account, my blood ran cold. Everything was gone. The entire album. Hundreds of photos documenting our courtship, our early marriage, our happiest moments of it had been wiped clean. There was only one person who could have done it. Julian. For Claire. He had not only abandoned me but had actively erased our history, leaving me defenseless in the face of a massive online onslaught. The consequences were swift and brutal. My identity was quickly exposed. Armies of online justice warriors dug up my personal information. They found the address of my Brooklyn apartment. The front door was splattered with red paint. They set up speakers outside my building, blasting vulgar, misogynistic insults on a loop. It escalated. I started receiving death threats, letters filled with graphic, violent fantasies. The day I finally decided to pack a bag and move into a hotel, I saw her. Claire was waiting in a car parked across the street. She slowly lowered the window, her face obscured by a pair of oversized sunglasses. The fragile, doe-eyed actress was gone. In her place was a woman radiating pure, unadulterated contempt. She raised her hand, extended her middle finger in my direction, and then her car sped away, leaving me alone on the silent, empty street. Maya was livid. She paced back and forth in my hotel room, clutching a sketchbook of my latest designs, her face flushed with anger. You have to do something. Elara, are you just going to let her get away with this? The truth was, by the second day of the public firestorm, my tech-savvy friend had already helped me recover all the deleted data from the cloud. I had the evidence. I could prove Claire was lying. But as the hate poured in, a strange sense of clarity washed over me. Why was I scrambling to defend myself? She was the one who had made the accusation. The burden of proof was on her. All I needed to do was wait. Let the fire burn hotter. Let the slander spread wider. Let the damages accumulate. The higher they built their pedestal of lies, the harder they would fall. I never expected to run into Leo Maxwell in Santa Fe. My work, it seemed, was the one thing that thrived in chaos. The curse of my personal life was a blessing for my career. I had received a major commission. A wealthy client wanted me to design a one-of-a-kind piece for her daughter's 18th birthday. Born in July, her birthstone was a ruby. And so, my quest for the perfect stone had led me to the art-filled, sun-drenched city of Santa Fe, New Mexico, known for its unique jewelry and gemstone markets. We met at the small, regional airport. I was shocked to see him standing there by the baggage claim. He was taller than I remembered, with the same broad shoulders and kind eyes. He wore a simple, well-tailored jacket over a casual shirt, looking more mature, more settled than the boy I had known. Years had passed, and a polite distance now lay between us. He rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture of awkward shyness I remembered from our childhood. Maya was worried about you, he said with a small smile. She insisted I come and act as your local guide. Leo and I had grown up together. If I were being generous, I could have called us childhood sweethearts. But ever since I had gotten together with Julianwo, had never liked how close Leo and I had drifted apart, our contact dwindling to the occasional holiday text. That night, under a sky full of stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch, he took me for a walk through the historic plaza. We found a tiny, 100-year-old diner, crowded and noisy. We were squeezed into a small corner booth, our knees almost touching. The air was thick with the smell of chili and fried onions. In the middle of winter, a glass of ice-cold limeade made my teeth ache but felt thrillingly alive. The chatter around us was a comforting buzz, and we both tacitly agreed not to talk about my life. Instead, we talked about the past. The old soda shop by our high school is still there, he said. New owners, but they kept the decor the same. Really? I haven't been back in years. The old lady who ran it, Mrs. Gable, she still asks about you sometimes, he said, a faint blush creeping up his neck. She asked me whatever happened to that girl who always insisted on wearing a leather jacket, in the dead of winter with the collar popped, just to look cool. I groaned, burying my face in my hands. Oh God, Don't remind me. Why does she remember that? He laughed. A warm, genuine sound. Who could forget? Especially since you used to make fun of me for refusing to wear a puffer coat. Because I thought it wasn't stylish. He put down his fork. A playful glint in his eye. And you're one to talk. Don't forget the time you liberated all the goldfish from the principal's pond and rehomed them in the vice principal's swimming pool. In the cozy, unpretentious warmth of the diner, we both burst out laughing. A free, unburdened sound. I hadn't felt that light in years. A week into my stay in Santa Fe, I got a call from Julian's personal assistant. He was probably worried, but his pride wouldn't let him call me himself. The assistant politely inquired when I would be returning to New York. The holidays were over, and there were household matters to attend to. I texted back a simple message via the assistant. People who are getting a divorce do not need to manage a household together. From now on, direct all inquiries to my lawyer. When the assistant relayed my message, Julian was at Claire's apartment. He was helping her review the will of her late ex-husband. The document was a legal labyrinth. It left Claire a magnificent but useless historic castle in the Scottish Highlands. The upkeep alone was a fortune. A financial black hole. She had asked Julian for help navigating the complex legal clauses. He had been there all day. It was 9 o'clock at night before he finally put the documents down and listened to his assistant's report. Let's stop here for today, he said, looking up at Claire. She was wearing a white silk dressing gown, looking exactly as she did in his memories. But the old spark, the old pull, it wasn't there anymore. Suddenly, he had an overwhelming urge to see Alara. He wanted to see his wife. His movements became rushed as he packed his briefcase, completely missing the stiff, forced smile on Claire's face. Just as he reached for the door, a soft hand closed around his wrist. You're leaving? She asked, her voice soft and pleading. I promised the baby I would video call with you tonight. Stay. He wants to talk to his uncle. The child had been an accident, just like that one night of weakness in London. Claire had told him the child was his, unwilling to cause her more pain. The subject of a DNA test was never broached. But the more she mentioned the child, the more he found himself wanting to see his wife. He pulled his hand away without a second thought and walked out. His car sped through the night, but instead of going home, he went to his office. He would work through the night. He would clear his schedule. And then he would go to Santa Fe and find his wife. As for the divorce, it had never been a real possibility in his mind. He knew Alara loved him. He knew she had no one else to rely on. This was just a rough patch, a difficult phase in their marriage. He would woo her, soothe her, and everything would go back to the way it was. I couldn't legally drive in New Mexico with my New York license for more than a few days. So to make things easier, Leo had arranged for a driver to take me wherever I needed to go. On the day of the gemstone auction, luck was on my side. I won the bid for a magnificent pigeon blood ruby without much of a fight. It was perfect, fiery, full of life, and with a depth that seemed to hold 1,000 stories. After settling the paperwork, the driver asked where I wanted to go next. Without hesitation, I said, the top of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. I need to watch the sunset. I wanted to find some inspiration. But more than that, I needed to sort through the tangled mess of my own thoughts. I found a quiet spot on an overlook, a cup of hot cocoa warming my hands. It was a little too sweet, a little too rich. I had barely taken a sip when a familiar voice sounded from behind me. Is it cold? I turned, surprised. It was Leo. At the same moment, I had been about to ask him the same thing. We both smiled. He gestured for me to speak first. Are you tired? I asked. It was a simple question, but it held a deeper meaning. I wasn't just asking if he was tired from his day, but if he was tired from the past several years. The night before, Leo's mother had invited me to dinner. After high school, she and Leo had left for the West Coast in a hurry. My own parents, in their social climbing frenzy, had kept me so busy that I never even had a chance to say goodbye. After all these years, Mrs. Maxwell had a few more lines around her eyes, but her gentle, elegant demeanor was unchanged. She was a sentimental woman. She had kept so many things from our childhood. This was your first English award, she'd said, showing me a framed certificate. You gave it to me because you said I helped you study. You even wrote my name on it. She then pointed to a worn copy of a book. And this was a prize you and Leo won for a community service project. He used to read it every night until he knew it by heart. She gently wiped a speck of dust from the frame, her voice softening. My ex-husband and I met when we were studying abroad. I only found out after we married how wealthy and strict his family was. I couldn't stand it. So I divorced him and came back to the States alone. I was so sick. I didn't even realize I was pregnant with Leo for 3 months. She smiled. A sad, resilient smile. Being a single mother all those years, looking back, it wasn't so hard. She explained that the year we graduated high school, Leo's paternal grandfather had fallen gravely ill. He had begged her to bring Leo back to California. But that old man was stubborn. She said with a sigh, he didn't die. Instead, he forced Leo to go to university in England. We were poor then. I couldn't afford to come back and visit you. By the time I had news of you again, it was your wedding invitation. She paused, looking at me with deep sympathy. I remember Leo was planning to confess his feelings for you right after graduation. But that stubborn old man ruined everything. Mrs. Maxwell, assuming I was in Santa Fe to nurse a broken heart, was trying to comfort me without being intrusive. She was pushing her son forward as a sort of therapeutic offering. Elara, dear, she'd said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. If you're feeling down, just play with my son. He hasn't had a girlfriend in years. The few dates he went on were all disasters. He's still clean. I had blushed beet red, waving my hands in protest. But she leaned in closer, her eyes twinkling. And no diseases either. Feel free to play. I had been so mortified I wanted the earth to swallow me whole. Now, sitting on the mountain, the memory made me smile. I looked at Leo's profile, silhouetted against the blazing sunset. I felt a pang of nostalgia for the years we had lost. Fine to blades of grass, I said suddenly. Let's have a grass pulling contest. Like when we were kids. He laughed, shaking his head. That's so childish. We're too old for that. You're just saying that because you know I'm a sore loser. I teased. Whenever we played, if I saw you were about to win, I'd just rip your blade of grass in half. It's no fun playing with me. That's true. He agreed, his smile fading slightly. He looked at me, his expression serious. You've always been fiercely competitive. I looked down at my feet. That's why I have to win this divorce. I said quietly. I can't let Julian have the upper hand. Leo understood immediately. Do you need a good lawyer? I can recommend someone. No, thank you, I said, my voice gaining strength. My lawyer is a shark. I stood up, brushing the dust off my pants. I turned to him, a real smile finally reaching my eyes. Come on, take me back to the hotel. I want to ride in a fancy sports car, the great tech mogul Leo Maxwell. He ducked his head, muttering, what mogul? At the hotel entrance, Leo didn't get out of the car. We just waved a simple goodbye, promising to see each other soon. But as the elevator doors were about to close, a hand shot out and stopped them. It was Julian. I don't know how he found me. I only knew that his presence felt like a violation. The elevator ascended in suffocating silence. The moment the doors opened on my floor, he grabbed my arm, his grip bruisingly tight. He dragged me, struggling, down the hallway and shoved me into the fire escape stairwell. In the dim, concrete space, he trapped me against the wall, his body caging me in. He pressed his forehead against mine, breathing me in like a drowning man finding air. He was like a feral, abandoned dog, desperate and dangerous. Having fun? He whispered, his voice rough with jealousy and exhaustion. Lara, why didn't you tell me the truth? That you weren't here for work. Why was he the one who dropped you off? His voice grew ragged, unhinged. Lara, I want to lock you up. I want to hide you in a place where only I can find you. Then we can go back to how we were. I struggled to free one hand. And when I did, I slapped him. Twice. Hard. The sound echoed in the small, concrete space. Are you awake now? I demanded, my voice shaking with rage. He touched his cheek, a dazed look in his eyes. A few seconds later, his composure returned, as if nothing had happened. He stood up straight, moving out, meeting up with old friends. Lara, you've had your fun. It's time to come home. He had always been able to soothe me so easily in the past. He was operating under the delusion that no matter what he did, a few sweet words and a gentle touch would be enough to make me forget everything. He took my hand and pressed it against his cheek, like a child seeking comfort. You've been hitting me too hard lately. My face hurts. His voice softened into a coaxing murmur. I know you care about the Claire situation, but that's all in the past. Giving her the brand deal was just to help her make some money. Don't be petty. Okay, wife? I snatched my hand back. It's not about being petty. It was mine. Julian. It was mine. And you gave it away. I looked him in the eye. My voice cold as ice. You're a smart man. You know I'm not playing games. So stop pretending to be a fool to justify your betrayal. He stood there, motionless. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, and then held it up for me to see. It was a flight confirmation. Tomorrow afternoon, he said, his voice firm, leaving no room for argument. You're coming home with me. Before he left the stairwell, he leaned down and pressed a light kiss to my forehead. I calmly took out my own phone and dialed 911. Hello. I'd like to report an assault. Thanks to Julian, I got to experience a late-night tour of Santa Fe from the back of a police car. At the station, his lawyer, flown in on a private jet, argued passionately that it was just a domestic dispute. But the hotel security cameras told a different story. They clearly showed him dragging me against my will. My lawyer, connected via video call, asked for my instructions. I was calm. Press charges. Drag it out. Keep him tied up here in New Mexico for as long as possible. The Croft family was powerful enough to get him out of this mess eventually. But I needed to buy myself some time. I had a dog he'd been raising back in New York that needed to be dealt with. I booked the earliest flight back to the city. The moment I landed, I didn't rest. I went straight to my lawyer's office and filed the lawsuit. Not just against Claire, but against her and Julian jointly, for the misappropriation of marital assets during our marriage. I also filed a separate defamation suit against her. At first, Claire didn't take the lawsuit or the summons seriously. She continued to appear at events, smiling for the cameras. In one interview, she even brought it up herself. Alara and I both study design. A designer's greatest fear is having their work stolen or plagiarized. But clearly, Ms. Vance has done that many times herself. Her words lit a match under her fanbase. The online mobs returned, fiercer than before. But I didn't care about their noise anymore. Their hatred was a strange kind of fuel. The ruby I had bought in Santa Fe became my obsession. I designed it to be a blazing sunrise, surrounded by 5 brilliant, matching diamonds, all nestled within soft, sculpted petals of gold. It was the best work I had ever done. When the final sketch was complete, I submitted it to the prestigious American Jewelry Design Council competition. I should have known they would find out. Claire posted a video directly challenging the competition organizers. Why would you allow a plagiarist with such poor moral character to participate? She asked, her voice trembling with manufactured outrage. Her fans bombarded the AJDC with emails, demanding my disqualification. But the line that truly bothered me was this: there was a suspicion of plagiarism. My work was my soul. Her public accusation was a violent desecration. That same night, during a live stream, Claire held up a drawing. It was nearly 80% identical to my design. She claimed it was a design she had made in college, a birthday present to herself. In front of millions of viewers, she pointed a finger at the screen, at me, and called me a despicable, cowardly plagiarist. My phone, my email, my social media, everything was instantly submerged in a tsunami of vile, hateful messages. But the message that truly enraged me was from my wealthy client, the one who had commissioned the ruby piece. Alara, I need an explanation. There was one thing they hadn't counted on, one thing they couldn't have known. Because I had fallen so deeply in love with my own creation, with the sunrise ruby, I had documented its entire birth. I had set up a camera in my studio, not for any grand purpose, but for my own artistic record. For 56 hours, it had recorded every single stroke of my pen, every discarded sketch, every subtle refinement. I had a complete, verifiable record of my creative process, and I released all of it online. But I didn't stop there. Something about the perfect timing of Claire's accusation felt too convenient. I checked the security footage from my studio's external cameras for the weeks leading up to the scandal, and I found it. A secret that would blow their entire conspiracy wide open. In the video, dated 2 weeks prior, a black town car pulls up to my studio late at night. Catherine Croft gets out. She tries the keypad on the door several times, but fails. The new code I'd set after leaving Julian was unknown to her. She pulls out her phone and makes a call. The contact name displayed on her screen is Julian, but he doesn't answer. She couldn't have known that I had also removed his access from the security system. But then, miraculously, The door clicks open. Someone had let her in from the inside. The camera inside the studio reveals the traitor. My own assistant. The video shows Catherine handing my assistant a thick wad of cash. In exchange, the young woman I had trusted, mentored, and treated like a younger sister, not only opens the main door but also the safe where I kept my original hand-drawn sketches. Catherine takes out her phone and meticulously photographs every single page of my design portfolio. Then, she leaves as quietly as she came. And just a few days later, my design appeared in the hands of Claire Ashton, touted as her own stolen masterpiece. I didn't blur any faces. I didn't edit a single second. I posted the entire, unadulterated security footage online. A moment after I hit upload, the internet detonated. Julian, having just extricated himself from his legal troubles in Santa Fe, flew back to New York and straight into the heart of a media firestorm. He called me, his voice tight with fury. "Alara, you've gone too far. Whatever she did, you used to call her mother. Don't you feel any guilt for doing this to her?" I laughed, a sound devoid of any warmth. I leaned back in my chair, looking at his angry face on the video call. I wasn't the one who told her to commit a crime. Julian. I used this moment of chaos to deliver the final blow. I sent his lawyer a revised divorce settlement. The new terms were simple. Julian Croft would walk away from our marriage with nothing. Not a single asset. He read it, his face grim. His response was the same broken record. "I do not agree to a divorce." He sounded like a man suffering a great injustice. He continued, his voice strained. "I won't interfere with the Claire situation anymore. Sue her. Demand compensation. Do whatever you want. It's all up to you. But I have one condition. We are not getting divorced." Claire was there with him, visible in the background. She grabbed his arm, her face a mask of panic. "No, Julian. You have to think about the baby. He can't have a mother who's a convicted felon." She grew more agitated, grabbing a tissue box from the table and hurling it in my direction, as if it could somehow pass through the screen. I calmly leaned to the side, avoiding the imaginary projectile. "Julian, you are in no position to negotiate with me. Either you leave with nothing, and I drop the charges against your mother, or you can watch her spend the rest of her life being reviled by the world." Catherine Croft completely lost control. She flew at Claire, screaming and clawing. "It was you?" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "You were the one who pushed me to steal her designs. You said if I helped you, you would make Alara listen to me. You promiscuous little witch." I ignored their domestic drama, my eyes fixed on Julian. I laid out the choice before him, simple and absolute. He seemed to collapse in on himself, his shoulders slumping. His whole body trembled. When he spoke, his voice was a hoarse whisper. "Alara, do you still love me?" "Love?" I replied, the word feeling ancient and irrelevant. At 20, I had believed in fairy tales. I had wanted all of Julian Croft's heart. At 27, after tasting the bitter dregs of his betrayal, I just wanted all of his assets. "I stopped loving you a long time ago. The day Julian signed over the last of our joint assets to my name. We were officially divorced." Across the internet, the same people who had viciously slandered me began posting public apology videos, one after another. I won my lawsuits. The most egregious offenders, the ones who had fabricated stories and led the online mobs, were sentenced to prison time. The rest were ordered to pay hefty fines and issue public apologies. Some tried to plead poverty or youthful ignorance. I showed no mercy. When they cursed me, they wanted the world to see it. When they apologized, the world had to witness that, too. As for Claire and my treacherous assistant, they got what they deserved. Claire not only had to repay every cent of the marital assets she had received from Julian during our marriage, but she was also court-ordered to purchase, at full market price, the very ruby necklace she had tried to claim as her own. My life was full of new, inspiring moments. Hers had reached a dead end. My assistant received a 6-month prison sentence. I pulled a few strings to make sure they were assigned to the same cell block. I hoped they would take good care of each other. Catherine Croft, in a final, desperate act, spent a fortune to bring Claire's child to the United States. But a week later, a DNA test confirmed her worst fear. The child was not her grandchild. The shock, they said, sent her into cardiac arrest. She spent half a month recovering in the hospital. With all the battles won and the dust settled, I packed my bags. I decided to take a trip to celebrate my victory. On the day of my departure, I ran into Julian at the train station. He was dressed for travel, looking exhausted and lost. He stood in front of me, blocking my path. "Elara," he said, his voice thick with a desperate hope. "Give me one more chance. Let me start over. Let me pursue you again." I thought for a moment, then held up the train ticket in my hand. In college, I always dreamed of going to Tibet. I wanted to see the Potala Palace with my own eyes. I looked at him, my expression unreadable. "I'm going to stay in Lhasa for 7 days. No fixed itinerary. I'll just go wherever I feel like going. If, by some miracle, we happen to run into each other on a random street in Lhasa, then I'll give you a chance." That day, Julian stood and watched my train pull away. Then he turned and ran, presumably to buy the first flight to Tibet. But I got off at the very next stop. At that station, I exchanged my ticket for the earliest train heading in the opposite direction, toward a place I only knew from poetry, Dalinga. In the stark, beautiful northwest, the train chugged along, the wild, powerful landscape of the high plateau unfolding outside my window. I spent 7 days in Dalinga. Time moved slowly there. Life was so peaceful, so free, that my whole body seemed to uncoil. On the 7th night, I was sitting by a bonfire at a party hosted by the owner of my guest house when my phone rang. It was Julian. His voice on the other end was choked with tears. "Lara, I can't find you." I was calm. "I know," I said. "I never went." "Why?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Do I need a reason? Making that offer was just a whim. I never for a moment considered starting over with you." I paused, letting the cold truth sink in. "Besides, traveling is supposed to be for pleasure. I have no desire to run into trash on my vacation. 7 years was more than enough to show me you're not worth it. This kind of belated, remorseful pursuit of an ex-wife, it just makes me feel sick." I took a breath, then delivered the final, sharpest cut. "Julian, do you know why I told you to go to Lhasa? It's because I know you have severe altitude sickness. I was honestly hoping you would die there. A clean end, once and for all." The line was silent. "Having a marriage with you feels like having a criminal record." I continued, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "From now on, whether you live well or poorly, don't ever contact me again. I can accept that I misjudged you. I can accept that I was never loved. I can accept that what I gave was never returned. I can accept that some sincerity will never reach the other person. What I need to do now is accept my loss, settle the accounts, and leave quickly. Not trap myself in a dead end. I have always believed that I have the courage to start again." That night, in Dalinga, under a vast, star-filled sky, I wrote a single sentence for myself. "Today, I have walked all the winding roads. From now on, my life will only be a straight path."